You so much for joining today's afternoon presentation. This morning, we delivered a presentation focused on taxes and accounting, and I know how that might not seem like the most exciting topic, but it's one of the most important topics that your business will encounter. But another topic is finding funding for your small business or businesses. And so, that is important because there are many different ways that you can find funding for your business. And my name is Dr. J. Edwards.
And I'm Dr. A. Edwards.
Okay. And so we're all about finding funding resources. Personally, I write about 3 grants a month. And so, especially for rural areas. And so, this is something that's like totally up my alley. And then also on our page, we'll be posting, our group will be posting a few resources. So, for instance, Texas Women's University just released a second round of funding for women-owned small businesses. So that's another resource for you guys as well. But I just wanted to provide you guys with a background into multiple types of funding that you can acquire for your small business. Let's get started. So, funding opportunities. So, one type of funding opportunity is self funding. I personally like to call that bootstrapping because, especially with self funding, you're basically ramping up your business every month or every year. So basically, you do something small, you make enough money for that, then that builds upon the next phase of the business, so on and so forth. So a prime example of that would be my mother. My mother owned a childcare center for 20 years. And so at first, she was only licensed for, I think, 20 students. And then she was able to reinvest more money into the business. Then it became 30, depending on like how large it is. So she was able to expand the building, and then 40, and ultimately she was licensed for 75 over a 20-year time frame. And so she ramped it up, but kept reinvesting into the business until it became a larger business. So that's self-funding. So she didn't have to seek external funding for that. She was able to take budget from the tuition that the students were paying to ramp up the business and expand the operation. So that's self-funding.
Yeah, it's so important that you have these different styles. I also want to mention there's also opportunity for more local funding. I know a lot of times we think about funding being national or things like that, but there's also a lot of state and local funding, whether that's at the city level or the county level. All right. So in terms of one of the places people look for loans or look for financial support would be the Small Business Administration, also known as the SBA. So obviously the SBA has been in the news a lot lately in the last year, but they provide a lot of different opportunities for support. One area where they provide support is in the area of loans. If you need loans to get your business going, they also provide investment capital. So if you need an investment for specific things, and maybe it's a loan, but maybe it's not a loan, but you need certain things to help your business grow. That's one other option. You also have the disaster assistance. Well, right now people are very familiar with the economic injury disaster loans, but there are several different kinds of disaster assistance. Also, SBA is involved in guaranteeing surety bonds. They also provide some grants, and we'll talk about that in a moment.
So why would you need a surety bond?
So, surety bonds basically are a guarantee that you're going to complete your work. And so, it's essentially ensuring that you're able to finish the job. Now, why do you need those? In some cases, there are some contracts that you may want to apply for that will require that you have a surety bond. And so, then there might be certain instances that we'll get into that you may or may not qualify under normal circumstances to get a surety bond, and the SBA can step in and guarantee that bond for you.
Okay, so also I'm going back to the previous slide. We wanted to make sure, okay, there we are, to make sure that you know about small business loans. So we'll talk about that. Also, crowdfunding, what crowdfunding looks like. It's very important to know that you could have some family members, some friends, some colleagues, people in the community who truly believe in your idea, and they can provide some funding to help you get your idea or your business off the ground. Also, private lending institutions. So those include like credit unions. As I'm a little bit biased, I love Navy Federal and USAA, but also some smaller institutions, lending institutions in smaller towns and smaller areas of Texas are also really good as well. And then also venture capital. So going back to SBA.
So on the area of loans, one of the areas that you can get funding for is working capital. So if there's things that you need essentially to help you keep your business running, you need a certain amount of money for operations to do your work. There's funding for that. It also could be for some fixed assets. So if you need to get some equipment or you need a facility, there can be loans for that. You work actually with certain lenders that are affiliated with the SBA, and there's a lender match program. You have the website there where you can go to find a lender in your area. Now, one thing to keep in mind is, small business is a very, it means different things to different people. And so depending on the program that you're looking for, the SBA has a certain definition of a small business depending on the industry that you're in and the size in terms of number of employees, things like that. And so if you're not sure if you qualify as a small business, it's always good to go to that SBA website there that's listed to see if your business fits in that industry. Now, as far as investment capital goes, this is broader than just getting a loan. There are actually small business investment companies, or SBICs, that the SBA works with to invest in a business. And how that works is that essentially the investors are investing about a third of the funds, and the SBA is investing 2/3 of the funds. Or for every dollar the investment group puts in, the SBA puts in $2. And it could be in the form of debt, it could be in the form of equity, it could be a combination of the two. And so typically these are like 3-year commitments, and it could be different range, a few $100,000 to several $1,000,000, depending on which type of funding you're looking for. But it is an option. This might sound a little like Shark Tank if you're thinking about debt, equity, or both. But that is an option that you might want to consider to getting funding. So again, you may be familiar with the economic injury portion of disaster assistance, but there are also other forms of disaster assistance. Potentially, you may be able to get disaster assistance for real estate associated with your business. In some circumstances, you can also get assistance for personal property if you're not able to get assistance under other means. Also, machinery and equipment, things like that are damaged in a disaster. I'm thinking, if you're working in maybe the ag industry and you have ag equipment that's outside that gets damaged, that might be an option. Inventory, so if because of a disaster, you lost a lot of inventory, could be something that you could explore. There's also some options for active duty military. So I know many of the folks that are watching are already, retired from the military, but I know there may be some who are in the National Guard or Reserve and get called up for whatever reason, and maybe you're already running a business, and maybe you're running that business on your own. And so there might be some opportunities for you to seek funding while your business, or during that time that you're away from your business, if you're having to be called up to active duty. Again, we mentioned the surety bonds already, but again, these guarantee a contractor's work, can be essential in getting government contracts or business contracts. And if your business doesn't qualify for surety bonds for some reason, the SBA may be able to step in and guarantee that surety bond. It's still going to be offered by a third party, but the SBA is basically working with that government, with that third party to guarantee that bond. In some cases, the SBA offers grants. In the case of the Federal and State Technology Program, or FAST, that program is really targeted more toward organizations that support small businesses, but those programs can provide resources for your business. And so it's always good to go look online to see who in your area offers this program. And so there could be resources that they could use to help you. Resources that could go directly to your business in the event that your business does a lot of research and development would be the Small Business Innovation Research Program, or SBIR, or the Small Business Technology Transfer Program, or STTR. So think about, there might be some programs where there's research is being done, and then you're taking it from a more of a scientific perspective to applying it in a business setting. Okay, or you have something that you're studying and it has a business application, but it needs some research, it needs some funding to do that research before it's available to bring to market. Okay, so those programs might be for you if that's the work that you do. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about other sources of funds. So another source of funds is the U.S. Department of Agriculture, or USDA. So they actually have a program called the Business and Industry Loan Guarantee Program, and it's actually offered through federal banks or state chartered banks, also through savings and loans, farm credit banks, and credit unions. Okay, so they're coming in and guaranteeing that loan that bank or other financial institution is offering. And so we may think of USDA as just looking at the food that we eat, but they support the businesses that make the food that we eat, and they also support businesses in rural areas. Okay, so very important part of our governmental system and very important function.
And this is actually one of my favorites. I really value USDA because, like I said, when you go to Washington, D.C., you can see like USDA has the largest building by far for federal agencies. And so they provide a lot of support and funding. So if you can get some support, especially if you're in a rural area from USDA, it's a really good thing. And some banks are not USDA lenders, but find one that is and go for it. Okay, also AEP and SWEPCO and your local electric company possibly have incentives for small businesses, especially if you are operating out of a building. And so they have a smart thermostat program, which could save you. And then also we took advantage of the HVAC program this past summer. After we purchased our building, the HVAC system went out. So we had to find a way of taking care of that. And so we were able to get some funding for a HVAC system. And I'll just tell you, before the HVAC system, they're all about energy efficiency. But before the HVAC system, we were paying, I think it was around $200 a month for electricity for our building. And so now it's around like $40 a month. So that HVAC system helped out a lot.
Okay. And actually, I want to mention just a few things here before we get to the worksheet. So SBA also has a 7A program.
Okay.
And in that 7A program, there are actually a variety of different loan programs within it. So in that program, one of the programs that's in that I think would be of pretty much interest to you all as veterans would be the Veterans Advantage Program. And in that program, there are reduced fees. And so some of these loans, obviously there are interest rates and fees that you may have to pay in order to acquire that loan. Okay, so SBA offers those at reduced fees for veterans. So that's one thing that you'll definitely want to take advantage of. Another program from the SBA that you'll want to take advantage of is the 8A program, and it's a mentor protege program. And so you'll also want to take advantage of that if you qualify. There's for certain groups that may qualify under certain sort of disadvantage. It doesn't necessarily have to be one particular form of disadvantage, but also there's some economic criteria in terms of what your net worth is and how much you have in assets. But getting to be a part of this program, while it doesn't necessarily provide funding in a traditional sense, it does provide access to sole source contracts or set aside contracts. And so that is an opportunity to get funding and work contracts for your business. All right, so after that, I'd like to talk a little bit about local opportunities. So keep in mind that cities and counties have funding.
I'm attempting to catch up with him. Give me one second.
Right
there we are.
Yes. So it did get cut off there, but basically, there are some cities and counties around the state who are offering programs to help their businesses at this time due to challenges with COVID-19. So Fort Worth has the Preserve the Fort program. Houston has a Small Business Economic Relief program, and Dallas has the Small Business Continuity Fund. And even if your business isn't necessarily located in those cities in particular, there are smaller cities that are also offering programs. But also, if your business does any business in those areas, you may want to look into whether or not you would qualify.
That's a neat idea.
Also, at the state level, if you rely on employees that need to be skilled at some sort of craft, you'll definitely take advantage of the Skills for Small Business program through the Texas Workforce Commission. And they can pay for that training to get folks trained so they can come work in your business. And so you don't necessarily have to provide that funding for them to get trained. Another source of funding is a group called Lift Fund, and they're working with the state of Texas as well as the SBA, and they provide funds from as small as $500 to as much as $500,000, depending on the type of program and what your business needs. And so that's definitely something that you may want to look into. They're a nonprofit, but they support businesses. So that's something you'll want to look into.
So this is a sheet from the guidebook, but we wanted to provide a funding request, kind of a template or a worksheet that you could utilize as you are seeking funding. So it's important to have this completed before you start the funding process. So it's basically a drag and drop or copy and paste to the template for the bank or the application that you are applying for. And some banks actually have like Excel documents that they want you to edit, and then other banks have an online submission form. But just if you have this in handy, you can just submit some of the items on this form to the bank, and you will not have to necessarily start from ground zero. You can just copy and paste. Okay, so your business needs funding for the following items. So we just put some suggestions on here. So say if it's equipment or materials or salaries, or if it has to do with like having a building for your business, you can put the projected amount that you expect to request, and that can serve as a template for you. I know I only have 6 categories, but you might have 1 or even 20 categories. Also, on the second piece of the worksheet, it has your funding preference. So one option is I'm requesting funding in the form of debt. So this basically means this is money your business will have to repay. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And then the other piece is I'm requesting funding in exchange of funds in the form of equity. So that basically means this is money in exchange for a percentage of ownership in your business. So if you're looking at private equity firms, they are most likely going to be in the equity piece. And then also if you're looking at the a local lending institution, that will mostly be in the form of debt that you had to pay back to the bank. Some items to consider: ask about the interest rate and length of time you will have to pay back the loan, and just fill that in the interest rate and repayment term blanks. And then also on the right hand side, ask about the percentage of equity you'll have to give up in exchange for funding, because it's important to have this filled out per lending institution so you know exactly, you can make an informed decision. And then also it says your future strategic your future strategic financial plans. On the left side, how do you plan to repay the loan? And then on the right side, do you plan to sell your business one day? So is it short term or is it long term that you plan to hold on to your business? But just keep those in mind. If you need a copy of this worksheet, just let me know and I'll send the workbook to you. But aside from that, if when you have questions, we are here for you. We've been answering questions almost every single night, like several questions from you, whether in the form of email or in the form of direct messages. But we're here to help all of you. So please ask questions, write them below so others can see them and also benefit from the answers as well. We're excited that you tuned in. Thank you so much. And we will look forward to your questions and the next topic for next week.